Hey, what's up? My name is Quincy Carrier. This is QnA, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and answer them here in video format. Before I get started with your questions, I want to thank everybody who came into the live stream on Sunday and chatted with me. We had over 600 people watching that coverage live on Sunday, so I think this should be a normal thing. So I'm formally announcing that the post-game shows are going to be a normal thing from here on in. So definitely look forward to doing that more often. It's just great to hang out with you guys. Also great to chat with you guys during the game. The way you can do that is by joining the Flick app. Flick is a group chat service specifically made for sports fans. It allows you to talk about your favorite sports team whenever, wherever, 24/7 sports talk about your favorite team. If you want to talk Browns with me, join the Dog Chat Flick community so you can talk to me during the games. That's where I like to hang out. But without further ado, let's talk about these questions. And this first one comes from C. Zachary Chad, who says, need your thoughts on Olivier Vernon after that game. Hey, look, I live to see guys that I have said have not shown up all season show up. I live for it. I absolutely do. I would love nothing more to be wrong about every person that I said was not showing up or might not show up. I am absolutely glad to be wrong with that. And Olivier Vernon, you stepped up big time, man. Myles Garrett not out there. I was concerned. I was concerned about this team's ability to get pressure on Carson Wentz before the game, even before I knew that Myles Garrett would not play. And I was more concerned after it, obviously. But Olivier Vernon, talk about filling the hole, played a Myles Garrett game, if not better than the Myles Garrett game, right? I don't think Myles Garrett's had more than 2 sacks in a game yet. He had the 2 sack in a safety game. Now the bar's risen by Olivier Vernon's 3 sack in a safety game. So I hope Myles, whenever he comes back, feels the need to let everybody know where he stands when it comes to these games and put up a 4 sack, 2 safety game. You know what I mean? But shout out to Olivier Vernon. He had a great game. I'm happy to see this out there, and I hope this starts some momentum rolling for him where he starts to play like that number 2 beside Myles that we all thought he would be, that $12 million player that we all thought he would be when we traded for him. So I'm happy to see Olivier have a good game. I hope this turns into a trend for him because a good Olivier Vernon is going to mean great things for the Cleveland Browns going forward, most definitely. Next question comes from All Things Interesting, who says, after today's win and the Ravens loss, how confident do you feel about the Browns beating the Ravens on Monday Night Football? Look, I've been saying this for about a couple of weeks now. The Ravens, they're injured. They don't have their left tackle. They're losing pieces on the offensive line. They lost another tight end. They have guys dropping on the defense. They're just not as healthy as they were. And then they're going to go and play a very, very tough game against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thanksgiving. So who knows how they're going to come out at that one on a short week. They're going to have the mini bye. After that, they're going to play Dallas. So they're probably going to come into that game with a win. But when it comes to Monday Night Football, I think the Browns' chances are getting better and better, right? If this offense, by the time they get into that game, can be back to its 30-plus point scoring form, and this defense can be playing how they are now, the Browns have an excellent chance in winning that Monday Night Football game. Keep in mind, the Ravens, whether it's real or not to start the season, it start to become a thing now with the Ravens where they just can't win the big game. We talked about this when they played the Chiefs. We talked about this when they played the Steelers. We talked about this when they played the Titans. We talked about this when they played the Patriots on Sunday Night Football. All 4 national TV games, they just seem to not show up in those moments. Now, that could just be a pure coincidence. But whether it is or not, it's become a narrative, and we all know how narratives get implanted in people's head, and it just becomes a bigger thing from there. And I think that's what's starting to happen. So the Ravens have some things they need to get over. And the Browns, well, they're starting to get healthier, and they're starting to play better. And if this offense can get back to what it was, then it's going to be very hard for the Ravens to beat the Browns on Monday Night Football on the road. Now, again, the Browns have to do it, but I think their chances get better and better as the weeks go on. The next question comes from Bubby Talks, who says, it seems as if our O-line against top-tier defensive lines struggles like the Steelers and Eagles. Do you think we could pick that up for the playoffs? I think it's going to be more so up to Kevin Stefanski to step that up. The realistic thing when it comes to an offensive line is when a good offensive line goes up against a good defensive line, the good offensive line's always going to lose that tiebreaker because the athletes on the defensive side of the ball are just so much better than offensive linemen. Like, there's a talent disparity in football, quite honestly, when it comes to offensive linemen and defensive linemen. So that tiebreaker is always going to go to the defensive linemen. The Eagles won that tiebreaker, so the Browns' offensive line did not look great today. Is it something they can clean up in the playoffs? Yes and no. Physically, no. But they can overcome it better if Kevin Stefanski uses the shotgun more often and just tries some different things to avoid the pressures. I didn't think he got creative enough during this game when he had all that pressure coming towards him. I felt like he could have done more from that respect. But yeah, Kevin Stefanski, it's going to be up on him to make those adjustments. Now, will he? I don't know. He's a first-year head coach. It's a lot to ask, but 7-3 at this point in the season is also a lot to ask, so I'm not going to doubt him. The next question comes from the Browns fan who says, Quincy, I know we'll get free wins against that. Hold on, we ain't giving free wins yet. But how do we handle the Titans, Ravens, and the Steelers? It's going to be interesting, right? The Titans are going to be a tough team, but they do exactly what you do. So that's going to be interesting to see how that battle goes there, right? Because the Browns really can't stop the run that well, and Derrick Henry's a monster, and it's a road game. So there are things going against the Browns in that respect, but I do think the Browns could move the ball on Tennessee. It's going to be interesting, that one. The Ravens, I just talked about that one. The Steelers, look, we don't know if the Steelers are going to really be trying to play that game. Right now, they're only one game ahead of Kansas City, so they can't afford to lose a game here. But if they lock up that bye week by week 15, which is very possible, then, for the Browns, it's going to be a much easier day going up against, Mason Rudolph and the backups. And that's a game that they could win. So that one's up in the air. We have to wait till that week to know what that game's going to look like. Next question comes from Marco S., who says, are you more confident in the D-line now, or did their offensive line play bad today? As well, what did you see bad in today's game? The bad things I saw in the Browns game on Sunday, Donovan Peoples-Jones had to be more consistent with the punt returns and be just less aggressive overall with those situations. I still didn't like what I saw out of Mack Wilson. I think he needs to improve a lot. Baker had some uncharacteristic red zone misses, and I also felt like they could have utilized Jarvis and Austin Hooper more often, and those things would help them be a better team. And as far as the defensive line, I don't think this was a result of the offensive line just playing bad. They weren't going up against bad offensive linemen. The Eagles' offensive line was not a bad one. The Browns just played better. So I think this is a positive sign. The next question comes from Beep Beep Out of My Way. Do you think the Ravens will spiral out the playoffs, or will they pull it together? They look lost. I mean, look, a lot of their hopes are going to ride on this game against the Steelers on Thursday Night Football in Pittsburgh. I don't love being in that position if I was a Ravens fan. That is tough because when Thursday night games on the road, whether it's Thanksgiving or not, are a tough deal to begin with, then it doesn't help that you're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are currently undefeated right now, playing very good football right now, might have just be coming off of their best game that they've played all season. So that's going to be a tough draw. But, the Ravens, if you're the Ravens going into that game, it's all on the line. Because if you fall behind in the wild card race this year to 6-5, it's going to be a tough claw back in. And I don't care who you are, especially knowing that the Ravens still got to come up to Cleveland on a Monday night, still got to play some games at the end of the season. I think they get Cincinnati one more time, and they also get Dallas. So, they're probably going to get the 9 wins at the very least. But it's a uphill battle. And if they don't win that game against Pittsburgh, it's going to be a massive deal because then all 5 of their losses will have been in the conference. And for a team that does not have an overwhelming record, like the Baltimore Ravens look like they won't this season, then those 5 losses in the conference, that's going to be massive when it comes to these tiebreakers. So it's not a good situation for the Baltimore Ravens. They have to do something that they're not going to be favored to do, which is beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh on a Thursday night, which is very statistically unlikely just because of all the odds that are stacked up against them with the Thursday night home game against an undefeated team. They would have to show up like they haven't shown up before. Also, this is not a Ravens team that has made a habit this season of stepping up in those primetime games, in those, big time game situations. So it's going to be interesting for the Ravens. They're not exactly healthy right now, but things are going bad and they lose this game against Pittsburgh. I don't know how far they're going to spiral. Next question comes from Alex Murray, who says, do you think Myles Garrett will be out against the Jags? And if he is, do you think that would be a problem without him? I don't know. I'm not even going to guess there. I have no idea what Myles Garrett's situation is going to be. And will that be a problem? Less than it was against the Eagles. I thought it would be more of a problem against the Eagles because of how they play. They have a good run game. They're really effective in that area. I thought Myles Garrett not being there would be a huge loss and have massive consequences, but Olivier Vernon stepped up. I think against the Jags, they don't really pose that same level of issue that the Eagles do, so they might stand a better chance. This next question comes from Matter of Fact, who says, Jarvis was barely used today. I almost forgot he was playing. Baker seems to favor Higgins and Hodges recently. What are your thoughts on that? Also, Ravens, Dolphins, some other big losses in the league help set us up for a playoff push if we can keep it. The Browns are in a good position to make the playoffs. They just got to finish this season and win some games going forward. As far as Jarvis, look, I think this is more so on Stefanski than it is Baker. I think a lot of these plays are set up in a way that are still kind of assuming that the offense is at full strength, right? And this has happened with Kevin Stefanski. It seems to be one of his things. He does not change what he's doing regardless, and that has good consequences and it has bad consequences. The good consequence is the running in the fourth quarter, right? It always gets better in the fourth quarter because teams get worn down because he does not deviate from his game plan. The negative thing is like Andrew Sadeo being stuck out there more often than he should because the original plan was for Grant Delpit. Now he's just filling in that role. And I think you're just seeing Baker throw to Kadero Hodge and Rashard Higgins a lot because that's where schematically you're supposed to have Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, right? Those are the two guys who are supposed to be getting those targets. But now that they're out and two other guys are playing that position, those targets are now going to Kadero Hodge and Rashard Higgins. So I think this is just that Stefanski just sticking to his guns. And sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see how that goes. But I think he needs to get Jarvis and Austin Hooper involved more often as well. Next question comes from Mark JAR, who says, does 10-6 get the Browns into the playoffs? I think so. I think 10-6 does get you in. It depends on how some of these tiebreakers break out. Like if the tiebreaker is against the Colts, you'll be fine. If the tiebreaker is against the Dolphins, I don't know. I think by the end of the season, you'll be fine. So it really depends on some of these tiebreakers, how they break out. You just don't want to be 10-6 and the other tiebreaker team be the Raiders at 10-6 because then you don't get in. The next question comes from Moto P, who says, what do you think of the wins over the Colts and Texans, given the Colts just took down the NFC's #1 seed and the Texans beat the Patriots? Well, it's not like it used to be. I feel like the Browns should get a little bit more respect for those wins. Absolutely. I heard a lot of the goofy stuff about when the Browns beat the Colts, that the Colts were an 8-8 team and, the Colts aren't really as good as their record says they are. And they were obviously as good as their record says they are. The Browns just played better. The Browns have some quality wins this season. I would even argue they're 2 wins over Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati's not going to win many games this year because Joe Burrow went out for the year. But, Joe Burrow with that Cincinnati team beat a very good Tennessee team. So at Tennessee, which the Baltimore Ravens could not do. The Browns don't get a lot of respect, but it's just going to be what it is, right? People like to act like this is college football and some wins just don't count, but that's not the case. NFL, all the wins count, and the Browns have 7 of them. So that alone should get people to respect the Browns. The next question comes from Tyler Thompson, who says, hey, Q, do you think other teams in the future will have the same defensive scheme as the Eagles did against us, which is just blitzing the whole time? I don't think every team can do it. I think the only 2 teams on the schedule that can do it are Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But everybody else can't do it. And even with Baltimore, they don't execute at the same level that Philly was coming into this game, so I'd be a little less concerned. Again, this Philly team I thought would be a big test to see how Baker plays in dirty pockets. In some areas, Baker passed. In some other areas, Baker didn't do as well, but I think overall Baker had a good game and maintained some of these developments that he's had in these dirty pockets that I've liked to see going forward in the season. But that's going to be it for the questions for today. Thank you guys for asking. Have a great day and have a good night.